we are talking about an emergency.
A refugee crisis has been unfolding in the Horn of Africa, and tens of thousands of people are at risk. Dana Hughes with the United Nations Refugee Agency explains.
In Ethiopia, there's a state called the Tigray state, and the federal government and the Tigray government were kind of going back and forth and having quite a few issues. It escalated, and then on November 4th, the Ethiopian federal government decided to take military action. They also declared a 6-month state of emergency, and with that came a complete sort of communications blackout. And as a result of this conflict, we saw thousands of refugees start to flee across the border to Sudan. Since that happened about a little over a month ago, there's been 46,000 refugees who've crossed over. And we do believe that there's probably been an increased number of people displaced within Ethiopia, and we're very concerned as well about some 100,000 Eritrean refugees who are currently in Ethiopia, and most are in the Tigray state.
Hughes says she hasn't seen anything of this scale before.
I've been doing this job for 6 years, and before that I was a journalist, so I've been to many refugee camps. I've visited many refugees, and this has to be one of the hardest conflicts that I've had to cover. And one of the reasons why is because it was just so sudden. People heard gunshots, they heard bombs, and they literally fled with nothing more than the clothes on their backs. But it's really important to realize that these were people that never expected to be refugees. They were living ordinary lives like you and I. They were teachers and doctors and farmers. They had phones, they had families. And so to save their lives, they suddenly had to leave, and they're missing their lives at home. In a way, it almost feels like a natural disaster. It happened so quickly. So to see these sort of lives interrupted, to meet these educated, particularly young people, young people starting out their lives in high school, early 20s, to see the shock and to realize that it could be any of us, really. We think of it as like it's in Africa, it's far away, it's Ethiopia. But I look at these refugees, I look at the young men, they look like my brother. I look at the little kids, they look like my daughter.
The UN's Refugee Agency, along with other groups, is setting up a refugee camp in neighboring Sudan and is appealing for donations.
I was just there. We just started having enough, I think, to give, hot meals. There's not enough shelter, there's not enough water. And then even after you do that, people want to go to school, kids need a place to play. I think it's also really important to remember that this is all happening in a pandemic. So there's hygiene issues, there's masks that are needed.
But Hughes knows it can be difficult to keep focus on situations that can feel far away.
It's really hard right now. There's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot going on in America politically. There's COVID. It's a very crowded news space. But I think it's really important when you can to be informed about what's happening in other places, and not to just be informed, but pay attention, and you can see what your government is doing to help people.
This is Inside Edition Digital.